The most dangerous beach in California. Gina waited for Iris to finish reading the warning sign. The message was obvious from the illustrations. Blocky stick figures getting swallowed by giant waves, yanked out to sea, dashed against boulders. No blood, of course. Just cartoon lightning bolts at the points of collision, where the stick figure man dies or disappears. The most dangerous beach in California, Iris murmured, to no one in particular, still staring at the sign. Exasperated, Gina pushed on down the pathway towards the beach. She was carrying both beach chairs because delicate Iris, at age 28, had somehow acquired a bad back. At 32, Gina's back was sturdy, if a little pudgy. The weekend had been vast and achingly slow. At least it was finally Sunday, and the late afternoon sun signaled that soon it would be evening, and soon Gina would have an excuse to go to bed, and Iris would be going to her science conference downtown the next morning. The idea to go wine tasting that day had fizzled, mostly because Gina had had too many glasses of wine the night before, when they went to dinner at the modest Italian joint down the street from her house, inconspicuous, safely away from the boozy haunts where Gina's friends liked to gather. Over dinner, Iris had launched into a lecture about her dissertation, something about combustion and measuring the immolation potential of chemical substrates at different temperatures, the science of explosions. Cool, Gina had said, leaning in across the table. Do you wear a lab coat or a hazmat suit? Iris just stared at her for a beat. It was a serious question. Or if it wasn't a serious question, Gina had at least hoped for a laugh or a smile. I mostly just wear jeans, said Iris. It was then that Gina had ordered another bottle of wine and drank it all herself. Gina didn't wake up until noon the next day. When she shambled out of the bedroom, she found Iris in the kitchen, organizing her mismatched coffee mugs in the cabinet by size, largest to smallest with linear precision. Gina's head throbbed. So they got a late start and wine tasting was off the table. Trying to force her gravelly hangover voice into a cheery pitch, Gina suggested they just drive north and find beaches. It would be spontaneous. Iris just smiled in that cold, conciliatory way that Gina remembered from when they were kids. Family gatherings at the 4th of July when Iris always set the table and Gina always climbed trees with the neighborhood boys and then fell out and sprained something. And when that happened, her cousin had always been ready with an ice pack and a smile. At least the beach was stunning, grassy bluffs against a sky that was blue in the sharp, prismatic way that only happens in winter. The wind picked up when they walked out onto the sand. Gina wished she had brought more than a t-shirt and a threadbare denim jacket. She dropped the beach chairs in a clattery pile by the trailhead. There were campsites on this beach, the most dangerous beach in California. Gina couldn't understand why anyone would camp at a beach where you weren't allowed to swim, when running with abandon into the waves and diving into the churn was the best part of beaches. She supposed this type of camping was for people with a lot of self-restraint, who were pleased with just staring at the landscape and dipping a toe in. Speaking of which, Iris edged towards the water and measured steps. When the surf foamed up to her feet, she scurried away. Gina watched Iris do this several times, and then, in an act of defiance, Gina marched into the ocean, up to her thighs, soaking her leggings. She felt what those warning signs were about. The water curled around her legs and pulled at her like cold ribbons. "You're getting all wet," shouted Iris, shrill. "Make sure you can still stand." Iris approached the outer lip of the water line, craning her neck forward, not wanting to take a step into the ferocious ocean. Gina stayed a moment longer, feeling the icy water lap at her legs, until her skin tingled and then went numb, silently daring her cousin to join her. When Iris didn't budge, her mouth drawn down and worried, Gina walked back to the shore, kicking seaweed out of her way. They walked towards the bluffs. Iris was sniffling from the cold and the wind, and wrapped her baggy sweater around her. Gina suggested they turn around. She didn't want to be responsible for Iris getting sick for the biggest combustion conference in the universe. She surely would hear about it from her mother and aunt if Iris got sick. On the way back, Iris steered them even more inland, close to the campsites. Draping fibrous trees protected the sites from the wind, and the campers huddled around crackly fires and sawed-off garbage cans. Gina smelled beans and bacon. Okay, so this no swimming beach had some appeal. At the center campsite, there was a hot tub hitched to a trailer. Several tanned, burly men had stuffed themselves into a hot tub, and they were drinking margaritas. Gina tried to steer Iris closer to the ocean, giving the hot tub a wide berth. "It's warmer by the campsites," said Iris. "I don't know," said Gina. "Those guys look a little bit hey ladies." "I'm not in the mood for hey ladies." "What do you mean?" said Iris. She had probably never been hit on in her life. "Fine," said Gina. She moved to walk on the side closest to the hot tub, an odd mix of protectiveness and resentment brewing in her chest. As they walked past, Gina gave the men a tight smile. Her head still hurt. "Hey!" yelled one of the burly men. Gina and Iris turned around. "You!" Gina bristled as she noticed he was shouting at her cousin, "Nice Gap sweater!" "What?" said Iris, bewildered. She played with the hem. The sweater had a high crew neck and droopy sleeves, and was a pilly fusion of black and white knots that Gina imagined would absorb stains well, or combustion burns, or whatever. "I said nice Gap sweater," he shouted again, with a grin and a sassy head swivel. "It's Dockers," shouted Iris back, "circa 1996, a deadpan monotone. Gina tugged at Iris's wrist, wanting to get away before the men could find something else to mock. Iris's frizzy hair, her overbite. Gina had encountered these groups of snide, drunk men many times, had flirted with them, gone home with them. No good could come of it. You just keep walking. You don't encourage them. Then, snickering, but also with the tip of his margarita glass in her cousin's direction, the man shouted, "Can I try that thing on?" "It would get wet," said Iris, edging closer. "It won't, I promise," he said. Iris let go of Gina's grip and walked over. Gina trailed helplessly behind. They were well-groomed, these men, early 30s maybe, ambiguous sexual orientation, smooth skin, no wedding rings. Gina shook off her sweater. Her loose t-shirt underneath hid her slender body, which Gina always thought Iris had taken for granted or possibly never noticed. Iris handed her sweater to the heckler. He sat up in the hot tub, exposing the top of his broad chest. He stuffed his head through the neck of the sweater, and just as the hem was about to graze the water, Iris swept the sweater up in her hands and tied the sleeves around his head in a ridiculous lopsided turban. She knotted it so it made a bow right in the middle of his forehead. "There is only one logical way that it won't get wet," she stated. Laughter detonated around the hot tub, a sudden flash, an explosion. Someone poured Iris a drink. Gina stood in what felt like ground zero, not knowing whether to walk or to undress, wondering what she had been missing the whole time.